Every year, from the 25th of November to the 10th of December, the country marks 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. 2019 in particular has been a seminal year. Millions of women have made it clear that they simply will no longer tolerate inaction on gender-based violence. They've demanded a national government plan to fight the scourge. Tonight on Newsroom Africa, we assess the state of gender-based violence in the country, we explore some of the critical issues around it, and we take a look at the technology which is being developed to help in this fight. My name is Cathy Mohlahlana. You're watching a special broadcast. It's brought to you tonight by the Soul City Institute for Social Justice. Of course, we want you to be part of the conversation. You can tweet us, the handle at Newsroom Africa, the hashtags for tonight, hashtag count me in, and hashtag never tap out. Well, as you can tell, we've absolutely reconfigured things here at Newsroom Africa tonight. The studio has been somewhat thrown out of the box. I'm not by myself. I'm joined by, in fact, quite a number of panelists, guest experts, and, of course, ordinary people who have been involved in their own ways in activism that affects and impacts the fight against gender-based violence. Let me introduce you then to our first round of panelists tonight. Lebo Ramofoko is the CEO of the Soul City Institute for Social Justice. She's an internationally recognized defender of women's and children's rights. And of course, you're part of the people that have made tonight possible. So thank you so much for that, Sis Lebo. Brenda Madumise Pajibo is the director of Wise Collective and the co-chair of the Interim Steering Committee on Gender-Based Violence. Welcome, Dr. Brenda. Dr. Taleng Mofokeng, advocate Brenda. Dr. Taleng Mofokeng is a medical doctor, and might I add, an award-winning medical doctor now. Yes. Of course, last night she was one of those honored at the Glamour Women of the Year Awards. She's an author and an expert in sexual reproductive health rights matters. And Major General Bafana Linda is the Health of Family Violence, Child Protection and Sexual Offences Unit. He served and worked in the SAPS as an investigator, focusing on crimes against women, children and vulnerable groups for 33 years now. And as I mentioned, we're joined by a studio audience and some of the experts that will be contributing to this conversation tonight. Welcome, and thank you very much to all of you who are joining us from your homes. Well, before we get into anything tonight, we don't have to look far to understand the pervasiveness of the gender-based violence problem in this country. Just this year alone, the kidnapping, rape and brutal murder of numbers of women and children in South Africa have over the recent months ignited a significant amount of outrage, street protests, and of course caused a media storm. Let's take a look at some of those images that we've had from the year.
Uyinene Mkhwetyana, li 100 years. Karabo Mokwena, Sibongile Zenzile. These are some of the women who died in the hands of men they knew. While their bodies lay 6 feet under, their souls cry out, why me? Women and children, often more than men, are killed by their partners, family members and neighbors. Over the years, violence towards women and children has proven that it has no preference when it comes to race, class, religion, or age, and the scourge of a South African problem, but a global one. The murder of 19-year-old UCT student Uyinene Mkhwetyana exposed old and fresh wounds in South Africa. Wounds of sexual harassment, emotional and physical abuse, and all sorts of other abuse. In September, thousands of people, mainly women, took to the streets calling for an end to gender-based violence. They asked, "Am I next?" A social media movement sparked by Canadian Holly Jarrett, hoping to raise awareness on the issue of murdered women and girls. Women are calling for one thing.
We are tired of women being sexually abused, being sexually assaulted, rape and murder. We are done.
According to World Health Organization, 36% of women worldwide have experienced physical or sexual intimate partner violence or non-partner sexual violence. Globally, 38% of murders of women are committed by an intimate partner, mutilation or carting, while government, organizations and the private sector have pledged to help speed up efforts to combat violence. Vulnerable continue to fear for their lives. They continue to ask, am I next? The more women cry out, the more they are killed. Will their voices ever be heard?
And of course, that's simply laying a context and a foundation for our conversation tonight. And perhaps it's a good place then to start. Where are we in South Africa? What is the true extent of gender-based violence, especially when reporting is underreported, we know, and those statistics over the years have been heavily criticized for not being overly reliable as a true reflection of the state of affairs. Let me begin with you. Anyway, what is the state of gender-based violence in this country, and does a campaign like 16 Days of Activism help in that fight?
The campaign of 16 Days of Activism is a UN campaign. And I think what we do, like with Women's Month, we fall into the trap that thinks that we can only focus on the problem, you know, when we've got these, what I call calendar days. I often say we really event very well in the country, where in fact we will have events and it will go away. In fact, the fact that violence happens in homes, the fact that children can get raped in school, the fact that women can get raped in public transport means that as a country we must have a gendered response to everything that we do. So, you know, in some of the work that we do as Soul City with Soul Buddies, the majority of children fear violence at the school. Now, if you think about it, we take children to school for education. But that is not surprising. You know, you hear South African adults who will not identify themselves as abusers, justifying why you must use corporal punishment and not see that as violence. You see in the churches rape happening, and church elders, you know, men and women keeping quiet and not speaking up about it. So the problem is so pervasive that we really need each and every sector of this society to work tirelessly on a daily basis to uproot the scourge of gender-based violence.
Advocate Brenda, when Lebo speaks about the gendered nature of this violence, why isn't it important? The year we've been seeing the messaging around gender-based violence to move to say that it's South African men that are abusing South African women, and that it's important to phrase it even in that way.
And we should phrase it that way. We keep on shying away from it because we hoping to make men comfortable, right? And for us, that has to stop. So the president can't keep on saying the right things and hoping that we are comfortable with the things that he says, right? So if you keep on avoiding to name it for what it is, right? I mean, I sat in a case where the commissioner in the CCMA had difficulty in saying sexual harassment, right? He kept on trying to find a way to couch it, and we kept on saying to me, it's sexual harassment, say it and confront it for what it is. Unless we do that, as 58 million South Africans will continue to pussyfooty and run around this whole thing and not deal with it the way we're supposed to deal with it. Let's nail it, let's eradicate it, let's deal with it. I mean, we've been here before. I'm hoping that the 16 days and beyond, right, we start to see men in this country, right, men in this country taking action, right? So what we have seen in the last couple of weeks were conversations amongst men, right? And to have the conversation of why is it that they're violent? Why do you think as a man it gives you the right to grope me and touch my butt? I didn't give you permission to do that, but you think it's appropriate for you to do that. And when you are told to stop, you react violently, right? What gives you the right to do that? So we need to ask, men must ask themselves the difficult question, because we have asked ourselves, is it me? Is it what I'm wearing? And we have come to the conclusion it's got nothing to do with what I'm wearing. It's got nothing to do with how I look, right? It's your perverted and patriarchal, misogynistic attitude and behavior that you have grown with for a long time and socialized in such a way to think that you can take all the time and have control over me as a woman. So it has to stop, right? And they start to see themselves as partners, right? And you can't keep on saying, I love my woman, and you behave violently, right? And we don't ask, why is it that you're behaving in this violent manner, right? We need to find out. Yeah.
Dr. Telling, it's an important point that Advocate Brenda raises, because often this violence takes place between intimate partners, or many women would in fact know the people that are perpetrating this violence against them. How do we begin to infiltrate that space? And it's a conversation I want us to explore a bit further later on tonight. But how do we begin to take the conversation that seems easier to have on a public platform like this than it does perhaps in the home where it's happening?
I mean, I think it does speak to the difficulty and the complexity of the issue. You know, Advocate Brenda spoke to the issue that, you know, people are socialized, men are socialized in a certain way. And this is true even for children. From when girls are girls and boys are boys, they're already disciplined, and young girls are told, you know, sit properly. No one is saying, why is a child being told to sit properly? What's wrong with that older man who's now, you know, predatory, showing predatory behavior over children? And so young girls are already taught from a young age, you need to behave in a certain manner to avoid certain things, which is factually incorrect. And it's actually quite dangerous. And in itself, it's a form of violence, how young girls are disciplined firstly and how they are reared as children, whereas boys are allowed to just be free, climb trees, do whatever they want, and the excuse is often boys will be boys, right? So even from a young age, children know that if I'm a boy, I will get away with certain things because I'm a boy, and those privileges are given to me because of that. And so when they grow up to be men who are entitled, who don't know boundaries, who are disrespectful of other people's bodies, we need to think ourselves, how are we raising children differently? And it's very the minute children step out, society still, expects certain behaviors out of them because of their gender, because of how they present themselves in the world. Sure. And so it's a constant navigating between how do we unlearn and raise children differently and better, and how the rest of the society can be supportive. But we have to see it as everyone's problem. If we only still see it as women raising children on their own, that's a problem, because the next question is, why are women raising children on their own, right?
Sure. I'm going to ask you to hold that point. Major General, of course, you've been with the South African Police Service for 33 years now. Unfortunately, the SAPS is often the organization that has not crowned itself with glory when it comes to how it deals with gender-based violence. In fact, it's police officers that respond to many of these incidents who try to be counselors and talk women out of the situation, talk women out of what they've actually experienced. So speak to us from the position of the SAPS.
Well, the SAPS have 185 specialized units, which are called FCS, which are family violence, child protection, sexual offences investigations. In that space, we have specialized skills and trained detectives. But the point you are raising is quite critical, because women have to walk into a police station, then at a crime service center, our first responders, that's where we pick up problems, where women are being sent back, where women are being advised to go back and negotiate. That's a kind of behavior and attitude that our National Commission, our minister, is stemming very hard to say it cannot go on as usual. It cannot happen any longer. But what we're looking at is to take measures, drastic measures against those ones who are non-compliant, because the first responder training have been given to all our police stations, 1,038 in the country. But now the issue of compliance becomes a problem.
All right. So these are just the opening remarks. Our conversation tonight is going to take us through 90 minutes. So with you until 7:30 tonight, we'll be exploring various angles of this conversation. In a moment, then we'll also expand it to those who are part of our audience that's sitting in studio. This is a special dialogue. It's been brought to you by the Soul City Soul City Institute, that is, for social justice. We'll take a short break. We're back in a moment. Do stay with us.